A very good evening. A warm welcome to Dan Really Likes Wine, presented by Pick and Pay, and welcome to a slightly happier Dan. If you've been following my paddle misfortunes over the last fortnight and the delight of a snapped Achilles tendon, I'm just back from seeing my surgeon. I have a moon boot on. The delights of physiotherapy can begin, and I'm not quite as horrendously immobile as I was a little earlier on today. Still, 5.5 months to go, but I can have my first modest glass of wine today, and I've got quite a range to choose from, because not only do I have award-winning wine guests on the show with me today, plus an award-winning wine writer and editor, this is the first of two occasions. I'm hoping I'll see some of you this evening. Straight after the show, I'll be nipping over to another virtual space and joining JD, the team at Warwick, and the team at Pick and Pay to host this evening's virtual winemakers dinner. The wine has arrived. The Professor Black Sauvignon Blanc and a couple of the First Ladies. So I might just open one of those in tandem with the tasting going a little later on tonight. But that is for 6 o'clock, and with the Pick and Pay team right now, it is the chance to have a look at the latest Prescient reports with Winemag and how well they've done. And we're going to jump into that in just a second. Before we do that, though, here's a little bit of news from the world of wine. It was always going to happen. It was just a case of exactly how it would happen. What would the change be? It was a month or two ago when Canoncop announced the acquisition of Laibach next door. An acquisition in terms of ownership, not an acquisition in terms of widespread change. As far as I can see, most of the team is staying in play. But instead of Laibach, it is now the Ladybird Vineyards in Stellenbosch. So they managed to change as few letters as possible, hang on to a couple of vowels, and bang, Laibach becomes Ladybird, and we have a new brand but an old estate in Stellenbosch. And hopefully in the next few weeks we'll be chatting to the team, find out what, if anything, is changing other than simply the name and the brand, and look at the vision in partnership with Canoncop for Ladybird going forward from there. All right, also in the world of wine, a Strauss auction coming up this weekend. There's a live auction, and they alternate between the place a bid a week in advance and hope nobody outbids you, and the right, we're going live, what have we got for you to have a crack at. They're loads of fun to be part of, and you can attend as a voyeur, or you can attend as somebody looking to buy. And there's some great stuff there. This is the Peter Veldsman Durkee Christopher's private collection. Durkee made wine at Moni's for many, 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 many years. And Peter Veldsman, a bit of a legend in the food world in South Africa. And they're selling off a huge collection. You see a few Canoncop labels there. There's some Paul Sauer, plenty of Buchenhoutskloof. Probably the wines that have caught my attention the quickest, though, there are some GS66s and also some GS68s, the George Spiess, that legendary wine. Is it South Africa's greatest wine ever? That's a topic for another day's show, but that Strauss auction will be this Sunday, the 15th of May. And then if you are looking to do something in the Johannesburg area, this coming Thursday, the Constantia Wine Route launching the new Constantia White Blend. You'll pick up a few familiar faces in there. There's Buller Herber. We had Megan van der Merwe on the show on Monday from Beau Constantia. The Sauvignon Blanc King, Matt Day, out at Klein Constantia in there. The Steenberg team with Elunda. But yeah, so the full Constantia lineup. And they will be having a chance for you to taste wine. And that is coming up on Thursday evening. You can head over to the Constantia Winery website for all of the details. But that's Thursday evening, 6 until 9 p.m. in Johannesburg. And you can also have a look at our social media spaces if you want to go along. It's a Southern Sun Hyde Park, 290 rand a person. There's a bit of food thrown in there as well. Tickets at Quicket. And they can see at the bottom the full lineup of Beau Constantia, Baden Verwachting, Constantia Glen, Eagle's Nest, Constantia Royale, Kurt Constantia, Silver Mist, and Steenberg. Promised to be a really, really cool evening. All right, well, that is a good one for next week. For this week, the chance to raise a glass to three winemakers who have been recognised in the latest edition of the Prescient report. Christian Eedes is a regular on the show. It's clearly a bit chilly in the Cape. He's dressed up like he's off to the Arctic. He joins us. A warm welcome, Christian, and a warm welcome too to three of our acclaimed winemakers. Janno Briers-Louw joins us on the show for the very first time, won't be the last. Our Shiraz champion, Richard Duckitt, who's been a regular face on the show over the years. And I see we've lost Sebastian Beaumont for a moment. The hamsters running the wheel that powers the internet in Botrafir have clearly slowed down. We'll try and get him back in a moment. While we do that, welcome, guys. Congratulations. And not just to our winemakers, but Christian, to you too as well, because it's quite easy for us to see the results and have a look and argue and debate. But there's rather a lot of work that goes into all of these. Tell us a little bit about these particular reports and the teams who've been alongside of you in putting them all together.
Hi, Dan. We released three reports as of Tuesday. The panel consists of three separate individuals in each case. We taste blind, which is to say labels out of sight. And the process is discussion-based. So it's not simply a matter of tallying up the scores and coming out with an average. It's kind of looking at each wine in some detail and debating the merits with your colleagues. We've decided to sort of consolidate the reports just to sort of streamline our processes. So that's why all three came out together. We had, starting with chenin, we had 82 entries. And then Cape White blends, which are chenin driven, we had 27 entries. And then we had 99 entries for Shiraz. And we tasted over 2 days for chenin and the blends, and then a further 2 days for Shiraz. And that involves, as I say, a three-person panel, an associate judge, a tasting coordinator who's laying out all the stemware, filling glasses. My colleague Jacqueline the Hood acts as auditor, collates all those scores, and then it's yours truly writes it all up and puts it out there into the cybersphere.
And gathers much excitement and interest as a result. Take me back a step, though, because there's been a lot of chatter. We've had quite a few questions and queries. How does this all work? Give us the basic mechanics. Who's involved in terms of the entries? How do they get involved? And what sort of reflection do you feel these three reports have been on the three categories in question in terms of what's out there at the moment for South African wine?
Okay, so I think it's increasingly difficult for any competition to be comprehensive. That's the first point I would make. So we invite entries. There is a cost involved to the producer of 1,250 Rand. So it's at their discretion whether they want to enter or not. I would like to think that as much as anything, we do talent spotting function. So it's often the point's often made that a few of the big players are conduct that. A lot of those established names, have got big reputations to protect, and they don't tend to enter any competitions. The role I think we're fulfilling is that identifying new and upcoming talents, and yes, and in the case, so like an Eenzaamheid Shiraz, possibly not that well known to the general public, but by the same token, Bellingham is a very well established brand and a household name, and so there's also, we're endorsing Bellingham's credentials.
And before we have a look at them all more specifically, more individually, from what you got to taste, was there a general sense of the quality going up, of the overall wine that was delivered to your door and washed down with enthusiasm being particularly good this year?
So the reason we bundled chenin and Shiraz is that I would contend that they're South Africa's strongest categories, white and red respectively. And then the so-called Cape White blends, as I say, are chenin based or chenin driven. It's our our suggestion is that they should contain some chenin as a point of differentiation from any other kind of blend. And overall quality extremely high, as one might expect. The depth is amazing, and I can just. It was a pleasure to judge both chenin and shiraz. They're just really, really good.
All right, chenin, of course, featuring both on its own and as the driving force behind the Cape blend on the white side. Red Cape blend obviously being pinotage. Let's go over to the man who headlined the Chenin Blanc Act before we talk a little later more specifically about this wine. Richard, give me your sense of competitions as a whole. We're only human. We get a thumbs up. We finish top of the pile. It's something that's going to make you happy. But how much faith importance do you place in these as a winemaker? And from there, how much does it do for the marketing of, in this case, a wine that's come out on top?
Hello, Dan. Thank you very much for having me. Great to be back. So we're obviously super happy with the result. But as Christian said earlier on, awards like these definitely endorses the brand, I assume. And it's great actually because you can build up a whole track record. And I think, basically for general public and then see, that in general, when over a number of years, the wine is consistently good, and it definitely helps with sales, of course. So what I think with this particular show that I like about it as well is, sometimes you see wines that sort of fall out or something because it's a little bit odd or a little bit different, or the alcohol's a bit lower, or it's got less oak or more oak or whatever. So the outliers sometimes get mislooked. You tend to miss them within a lineup. And I think what's great with this show, if you look at the range of wines, it's a wide variety of different styles, of different vintages, different, wooded, basically unwooded, and different terroirs as well. So just at least a feather in the cap for the judges for that. They really did a great job, I think, with recognizing all of those different styles. So we obviously into quite a lot of competitions, and the competitions are obviously important for us because they do translate later on into sales.
Which is, of course, very important from the marketing perspective. For you as a winemaker, how much of an input do you have? Is it the marketing team saying to you, Richard, do you think we should enter this one? And if so, what wine do you think we should put forward? Or is it more driven by the marketing team going, right, this is the one that we feel sits with the brand and we're going to nudge into that direction?
Dan, it's probably a 50-50 within our case. So marketing will actually do the entries, but they will always ask our opinion. Should we enter this? What vintages should we enter? Yeah, but of course, from a marketing perspective, they want to enter into competitions that that adds value to the brand, if that makes sense. So they don't always want to enter every competition. They do it strategically. And with that, with the winemaker's input, we tend to come out with a decision together. So it's probably 50-50 within our case.
All right, let's see how it works for Botrefeer's most stylish man. It's a low base, but we award the title nonetheless. Sebastian Beaumont, lovely to have you back on the show. I was, of course, with you not long ago, and you gave me the wine in question, the one that is finished up top of the Cape blend category, and we'll find out why with both Christian and yourself a little later. But as with Richard, your approach to the competitions, is it absolute euphoria and a public holiday at Beaumont when you finish top as you have now? Is it floods of tears if you don't get the gold medals or the Plateau 5 stars? How is your approach, your philosophy to wine competitions and ratings?
Dan, I think you summed it up perfectly. It's either tears or the ululations. No, I think I'm a bit more skeptical about these things, and I kind of it's getting recognition in a blind tasting for a wine that in my range is not very well known or well established. It's quite a new wine. I started making this in 2015, so it's a new wine in our portfolio, and that was the kind of reason for submitting that and not submitting Hope Marguerite to the chenin category or the unwooded chenin to the chenin category. So for me, I look at it more from a strategic point of view, and I know Christian has been doing these Prescient reviews for the last few years, and they are controversial. They do stimulate discussion and disagreement amongst us winemakers, but is it really important for us winemakers to be disagreeing about or arguing about it? It's not really. It gives, I guess, the consumer a bit of an idea of what's going on in the world of wine, and it exposes a small snapshot of wines to you to make a little selection or to try and see what they're all about, And if you slightly remotely into wine, then this is quite fascinating. And we saw it last night at the dry dock tasting where we had an incredible crowd of people, and the guys there who run it said, there's actually a lot of new people coming here to taste this, and that's what it's about. At the end of the day, here you got 10 wines from each category, and they suddenly being exposed to exposing themselves to new customers, and people are being maybe opening their minds, maybe changing their perceptions, maybe realizing, wow, some of the really nice affordable wines are doing well, and you shouldn't look at price always as the thing to determine it, but find wines that you like drinking and try stuff and keep experimenting, and that's what it's about, opening it up. And so my hat's off to them, and I'm super chuffed for getting the recognition for New Baby, but it's very different to Richard's point of view. I mean, I make 2,400 bottles. He's probably making 50 million bottles of that chenin of his. No, I'm kidding. He doesn't make that much. I know. But it's like it's a different scale, and it kind of works for both. So it's the journey of wine.
You speak to that sense of debate. It always reminds me of a great story from Guy Webber, formerly of Stellenzuck, now with Hill and Dale. And he was on a tasting panel. It might even be one of yours, Christian. And he was one of the judges. And he got into a furious argument. Somebody wanted to give a particular wine 19 out of 20, equivalent of 95 points on a blind tasting. He was one of the judges. And after much animated debate, he finally argued the person down to giving the wine 15 out of 20, and it was one of Guy's own wines, which I think sums up so much of the beauty of this, Sebastian, and that we all have our different opinions, and sometimes even the own winemakers are getting things wrong, but it stimulates that debate, and it pushes our interest and pushes new wine into our horizons.
Exactly. That's exactly it, and I think that's the beauty of wine. Never be too sure about your own perception of it. It's keep an open mind, and anybody who tells me they don't like this cultivar or this style of wine is just being silly. You should just keep exploring it. The wine world is so fantastically diverse, and there's so much to try that and here's a little snapshot, that gives you a little guidance, or you can go and buy all top 10 wines and try them out and compare them and come up with your own opinion.
It's a bit like my wife insisting that she doesn't like cricket. She just hasn't watched the right game yet. We'll get there eventually. Let's head over to Janno and welcome you for the first time. We haven't had you or the estate on the show, which is a poor reflection on me, and I do apologize, but a warm welcome. Lovely to have you with us. Congratulations, and we'll talk about your Shiraz in just a moment. It's clearly a wine that has raised a lot of interest and caught a lot of eyes. Tell us a little bit about the estate, and in particular, tell me about your surname and how that comes to be, because I believe there's a reversal of the usual marriage process in terms of how that eventuated.
Yeah, Dan, thanks a lot. It's a privilege to be on the show. And about Eenzaamheid, I mean, we're a mixed farm, mixed agriculture. We farm sheep, cattle, wheat, grapes, and we've also got a function venue here. And we've been at it. The family's been at it for 196 years now. That makes me the 7th generation continuously farming on this site. yeah, the privilege to be working with older vineyards that were planted by my dad. Some of it, even the chenin I'm working with, was planted by my grandfather. So yeah, a lot of a big privilege to be working with it. My surname Briers-Louw. It's a double barrel surname. So basically, it's Briers land, but a Louw youngster married a Briers daughter. The surname would have changed of the offspring. So they said, no. The surname must not change. It must become Briers-Louw instead of Louw. When the man marries the wife, her surname changes and the offspring surname changes. So yeah, now for 4 generations, we've been Briers-Louw.
Well, it's a name to which we now attach some very successful wine, very proudly made, and wine out in the broader Paarl region. We had Melu Lambert on the show the week before last, talking about how she felt that Paarl was the next big thing when it comes to wine. We're seeing a lot of very exciting stuff happening in Paarl. Your top of the list is the latest addition to that. Give us your sense, Janno, of what is driving Paarl, what's giving Paarl the ability, as you're showing, to make some really special wine.
Yeah, look, Paarl is so diverse. It's such a huge area and so many different pockets. Situated is Agterparel. That's on the ocean side of Paarl Mountain. So we're actually in the middle between Durbanville and if you want to go north, Swartland to the north, and if you want to go south, Stellenbosch to the south. Basically, southeast of us lies Franschhoek. So yeah, we're in between all the big name areas, and yeah, I like to see Agterparel is a very special part of Paarl because it's mostly a dryland viticulture area. Not much irrigation on this side. We've got very strong soils that can hold on to the water, and that makes it unique to be able to ripen your grapes without irrigation. That's basically what we do. So yeah, Paarl has so many pockets. I mean, if you look at Simonsburg, Paarl, exciting stuff happening that side. Agterparel, wine of origin, has been coming along since 2018 only. So it's of the newest wards out there. So we're still working. Currently, it's just me producing wine of origin Agterparel, as far as I know. So we're working on getting the area's name out there and showing people that we can produce quality out here, even though Paarl is perceived as a slightly warmer area. I think Agterparel, where we are, we're very exposed to the southeaster, and that cools it down quite a bit more than in the valley of Paarl itself, where they're very sheltered off from the cooling effect of the southeaster.
Well, if you're looking to make a name for the area, finishing top of the Winemag Prescient Shiraz report is a pretty good way to start. Again, we'll leave the exact details to the wine for just a moment, but more broadly speaking, as per the questions to both Richard and Sebastian, the entering of these competitions, the resources you need to decide, right, this is the one I want to go in for. How important is this for you, not just in the broader space of your particular brand, but the area which you're clearly trying to cultivate as somewhere as a home for good wine?
Yeah, I think most of it has been said. There's always, I think most winemakers have that love-hate relationship with competitions. Sometimes a wine you really back comes out and it doesn't score like you wanted it to score, and sometimes you back a wine and it comes out tops. It's one of those things. It hit and a miss sometimes. That's my experience of it. In terms of entering it, it's all about the budget. There's not a lot of sellers out there that has an unlimited budget for competition entries. So the smaller brands like Eenzaamheid, we have to choose carefully what we enter, and we can't enter like a Shiraz 3 vintages for this competition and 3 vintages of chenin and hope that one comes in like some of the big players do. Nothing wrong with that. They've got the budget for that. We just have to choose carefully because the cost does add up. It's normally free bottles, and you got to read the fine print on all these competitions. A lot of free bottles or discount or traveling comes with it. Then, yeah, it's worth it in terms of marketing, but yeah, it does add up in the end. And stickers also, it's a big cost. Nice to be able to stick something, but it comes at a cost.
Well, you've got some stickers to buy now, I'm afraid. You're going to have to go shopping for those. Let's kick off now with a look at these specific wines and go back to Christian. The challenge for you, for the other judges, with Chenin Blanc as a category for South Africa, where we've got both such a huge number of really, really top Chenin Blanc producers, but also we've got so much different style and interpretation of Chenin Blanc. You might head up to Sebastian's part of the world where you're finding something that's a little bit leaner, a little bit more precise, or down to the western side of Stellenbosch and you're finding stuff that's got a lot more fruit to it and a bit more presence, and they're all very different. How do you as judges work out, what's better, what's not quite so good, what defines your criteria for deciding, right, this is the Chenin Blanc that's going to sit top of the pile?
So I think when it comes to Chenin, it's beholden on the panel to be as open-minded as possible. I mean, the thing about Chenin, to your point, is that it is very stylistically diverse, and those styles are all legitimate. So you can have bone dry through to semi-sweet, and they're both completely valid. And so as a panel, you just need to constantly sort of make space in your mind for those different styles, and not get too prescriptive in your own mind as to what constitutes good Chenin.
You have decided what constitutes your best Chenin from this selection. It is Richard Duckitt and his Bellingham Old Vine series, the Bernard series Old Vine. What was the collective thought from the judges as to what made this pick of the bunch?
I think the best wines, if there is one sort of overarching theme to the best wines, is that they have excellent fruit concentration on the one hand, but also great freshness, drive, which comes from the acidity. And so they combine both palate weight and the sort of brightness at the same time. And I think that's definitely the case with the Bellingham.
Well, let's get the thoughts of the winemaker. Richard, we know you're very happy because the smile is very firmly fixed in place. Tell us a bit more about this wine, about the style of it, and why you feel it has been so rewarded.
Thanks, Dan. So okay, the name basically gives it away, the Old Vineyards, of course, which is a very important part of it. It's made from two different terroirs, so Stellenbosch terroir and Cape Town terroir, which is a cool climate site. So as Christian just mentioned now, the freshness and the concentration, that I feel most of that comes from the Cape Town site, which is a cool climate site. So as you know, Chenin Blanc is a very diverse grape. It grows incredibly well in warmer areas, and so does it also grow very well in cooler areas. But it's stylistically a little bit different. And I think it's that difference, from the cool side really that makes our wines. The Stellenbosch side, warmer fruit gives you more of the stone fruit, apricot, peach, a lot of concentration on the palate. But the Cape Town side gives you almost a hint of a green style of fruit, like a little bit of a green apple, more citrusy notes, and also definitely a little bit of freshness behind the palate that comes through there. And also the cooler sides, I feel, work very well with oak. So this is 30% barrel fermented. But you almost don't pick up oak. It's really integrated and it's part of the wine. So that for me, basically I feel makes the wine.
I'm glad you mentioned the oak because I was going to speak about that. With not just a Chenin, with a Chardonnay as well, in a country that's got a history, especially with Chardonnay, of overusing wood a little. It's that sense of framing the fruit and framing the wine rather than hammering it into submission. And I've had this wine, so I know that you've done it right. And Christian and his team have agreed with you. It's also a wine that's got a little bit of a history to it. We've mentioned this on the show before, but just give us a reminder, the story of Bernard and why Bernard is celebrated in this series.
Yeah, so Bernard basically bought the property basically 1930s. And so he was he was a Polish Jew, okay, who moved out to South Africa, and he and his wife Frida bought the property during that time. So he didn't know much about winemaking then. So they decided to go on an overseas trip. So they drove their car out to the harbor, put it on the ship, climbed on the boat, and off they went to Europe with the car and everything. So, and then when they got to Europe, drove it off the ship, and they just did a whole tour around Europe, basically for a few years, around France and Germany. And that was where he really learned about winemaking. So then he came back in the early 40s and started all these Bellingham brands. But he was a very innovative guy, a lot of new ideas and new things, which is a bit weird. It's okay. The South African wine industry was very conservative, a lot of sweeter wines. So he produced the first dry styles of wines. He produced the first rosé in the country. He also bottled the first shiraz in South Africa. So very innovative for his time period. Yeah.
And I suspect he's looking down with a smile on his face as the Chenin, that is one of a number of wines that remembers him, takes top position in the Wine Magazine Prescient report in the Chenin Blanc category. We'll come back to Richard one more time before we go, but let's go back to Christian. The Cape White blend, a blend driven by Chenin Blanc. I think most people are fairly familiar with a Cape blend as a red wine with Pinotage as the core. How important is it to create this identity, Christian, of a Cape White blend and underscore the role of Chenin Blanc in South African wine?
Well, that's precisely the idea. The Cape White blend is not a legislated concept by any means. And it remains quite controversial as to precisely what a Cape White blend is. But, over the last 10 or 20 years, this category has emerged, starting with no less a wine than Palladius from Ibn Sadi. And then there are various other notable examples. And it just seems to me that we're potentially sitting on something that's properly unique in the world of wine, that we can take to the world with great pride. And to my mind, Chenin's got to be a component. Some people refer to these wines as Mediterranean blends. Straight away, that's derivative. I mean, why do we want, we should be proudly South African. And in order, I'm trying not to be as prescriptive, but so yes, it should have some Chenin in, but the amount can be as little as 16%, all the way up to 84%. And why that band? It should be such that the wine is definitely a blend, and the winemakers have a 15% allowance, whereby they can still label the wine as a single variety wine, even though it's got 15% of something else in it. I think the wines should be conceived of as blends, before they're even made, and that's where we're at with Cape White blends, and it's just a way of encouraging producers to engage with the category and make more of them, because they make for really fascinating drinking. Not necessarily the most accessible. They're quite intellectual wines very often. Some get poo-pooed for just being a way of dispensing with odds and ends in the cellar, but I don't think that's the case at all. I think the very best ones, Beaumont New Baby is a case in point, are very carefully thought out in terms of what the taste profile that the winemaker is trying to create.
All right, the New Baby is the wine. We'll meet in a second. Tell me, Christian, why the New Baby top of the list? What really stood out there?
So interestingly enough, it's got a not insignificant portion of Sauvignon Blanc. but it doesn't necessarily present in the wine. It's a pretty seamless, to both aromatically and on the palate. I think the Sauvignon gives it again that sort of freshness and drive. But again, there's a complexity aromatically and in terms of flavor, combined with concentration, combined with freshness. And that's what makes these wines really excellent.
Greg Sherwood watching at the moment from London. It is the Wine Magazine reports always reveal a few sneaky quality ringers that are always worth searching out. Wine's not necessarily on the mainstream wine trade radar. Expect a number of these top performers to be sitting at Hanford Wines before the end of next week. And Lisa Harlow, Cape White blends definitely need more recognition. Many can stand up to the best blends in the world, like those of the Rhone. Well, let's go back to the man who produced the blend that has stood out in this category for Winemag, Sebastian Beaumont. I drank this wine for you, with you when I visited a few weeks back. And I said to you, give me any wine you want, knowing full well that you'd give me the Hope Marguerite and I could drink the entire bottle and be very, very happy. And then you brought out something else and I was initially very disappointed. And then I was delighted because it turned out to be something very special indeed. The fact that you decided to make this blend and use chenin when you've got such an established chenin as the Hope Marguerite, what swung that thinking?
Yeah, I think, Dan, I think it's, I'm very fortunate to have grown up on this property for my whole life. So we've just taken some of my Joburg guys around the vineyards this afternoon and shown them the different vineyards that we've got on the farm. And the guy sitting there Blaine was like, wow, you got that, look at that, awesome, planted in 83, Sauvignon Blanc. That's also a heritage vineyard. And I was like, yeah, it actually is. So I've had all these funny mix of cultivars planted that my father started planting in 74. And, at that time they were the co-op basically told him what to do. And we had a lot of chenin and a lot of Colombar and Claret Blanche and a small block of Sauvignon, all planted on the farm, and the classic thing of having 70% white cultivars and 30% red. And what's happened was that we actually managed to keep some of them over the years of experimenting and seeing whether Beaumont would be a Sauvignon Blanc producer or a Chardonnay producer or a Chenin producer. When I took over in 2004 from Niels, I was running around with an armful of white wines and an armful of red wines, and I realized that life was just too short to try and satisfy everybody's taste. So I decided to cull Sauvignon Blanc and I decided to cull the Chardonnay out of our range and become Chenin focused. And then in 2015, almost 10 years later, we've always been, blending away these kind of unusual portions sitting around, knowing that they actually produce something really interesting. And I thought, okay, well, let's see whether we can make a small batch of something fascinating that kind of captures Beaumont, Bot River in a blend, kind of concept. So my mother had always said each harvest is like giving birth to a new child. So that's where the name New Baby came from. And she was the winemaker at one stage, and she said that build up, the anxiety and everything of not knowing what you're going to get was the kind of her association with having children. And she had 3 of us, so she had plenty of experience. And so I wrote on the barrels New Baby for the Chenin portion that I thought would go into it, and the same for the Sauvignon, and I fermented them all in barrel. And it was 2015. It was the easiest vintage to make wine in South Africa, and I literally took the barrels, put them together. I knew that I wanted Chenin as the driving force behind the wine, because that is what our wines are about. It's Chenin, and Chenin gives both structure and intensity of fruit, and these old vineyards are special. And Sauvignon, I love, as I said earlier, I love all wines as long as they're well made, and Sauvignon is fascinating, especially when you put it in barrel and you ferment it in barrel. Colombar is like a razor, it adds acidity. The Chardonnay brings the buttery softness to the wine, and then Semillon is just a crazy aromatic grape that I also really enjoy. And so I thought, let's put them together in a kind of a ratio. And I didn't really know how the ratio would be, but it's more or less the way the vineyards are planted. And I made that first wine, and yeah, it got Platter 5-star that first vintage. I was like, oh, I'm onto something. This is easy. But I've carried on, and kept it more or less the same ratio. And really just to, even with a blend, you think, oh, well, you can blend it all together to taste the same each year. But each year is absolutely completely different and reflects each vintage. So that's where even when you make blends like this, you've got the kind of character and the personality of the vintage showing, and you've got the character of the grapes if you allow them. I don't use a lot of new wood, so there's one barrel of new wood in here, and the rest is all old barrels, because I want the grapes to talk and I want the wine to show itself from its fruit point of view. So yeah, it's something that we make 2,400 bottles of this vintage, and a little bit less of some and a little bit more of others, but all around that. And it's a great kind of addition to our range, and it keeps me stimulated, keeps me excited about winemaking. People always asking you what's new. I say, well, we're not a cell phone business. We're not producing mass produced products. We're making something unique and interesting. And that's where I quite like the way Christian has opened up the category to have a bit more freedom. The one thing I don't want to be done is I don't want to be prescribed to by a set of rules that say, well, you must have this much of something in it. I mean, and the chenin category compared to the Cape blend category on the red side is a lot more flexible. So yeah, I think it's the way to go. Maybe it doesn't always need to have chenin depending on the region. So I saw that the Constantia guys are all talking about a Constantia blend earlier in your little wine news category, and that obviously doesn't have chenin in it. So let's keep open-mindedness, and let's keep experimenting and trying and see whether this is something that can be really interesting for people to experience.
5 stars from Platter, now sitting top of the Winemag report with Prescient with 94 points in the Cape blend. I'm not sure whether it's the accolades that are going to make this wine sell out, or the fact that it is the perfect wine for expectant parents and nappy parties. Either way, I don't think it's going to be on the shelves for too long. Christian, the final category was the Shiraz. There's some marketing genius from Sebastian there. The final category, Christian, Shiraz. I'll ask you a very similar question to the one I did with the opening one around Chenin, but change it slightly. Shiraz versus Syrah. It broadly comes down to an interpretation of style, and one generally being a bit bigger and more powerful, and the other being a bit more elegant and refined. And that's a bit of a generalization, but it's kind of where the groups sit. Is there almost time in South Africa now for Shiraz and Syrah to be separate categories? Is that manageable? Is that something that would happen?
Dan, I think in reality, it really is a distinction without a difference. There are lots of very elegant Shirazes, and there are lots of quite powerful Syrahs out there. And the use of the two is meant to sort of indicate a stylistic direction, one way or the other. But I don't think it's that useful, actually. Increasingly, I think our very best examples are in a more elegant style. So does that warrant them all being lumped together as Syrah? Who cares, really? The wines are fantastic, whether they're called Shiraz or whether they're called Syrah.
Well, whatever they are called, they have performed well in the case of the wines that entered this year, and none more so than the Eenzaamheid. Did this take you by surprise? Because it's a wine that, as you mentioned, is not perhaps quite so well known. We've already seen from Janno that it's early days for this part of the winemaking world. Was this the wild card of the voting?
Not entirely. It's kind of my job to sort of be aware of up-and-coming producers, and I think Janno definitely qualifies as such. He's made some fantastic Chenin in recent times, and it was interesting to hear him talking about where Agterpaal sits geographically. And I tend to think of Agterpaal segueing into the Voorpaardenburg, and the Voorpaardenburg being the other side of the Paardeberg Mountain, which produces so many great Swartland wines. So it's ripe territory for good wine, good Syrah and good Chenin, and I think that was borne out by this result.
This wine is one that's got a lot of people talking on WhatsApp groups, on social media. It's going to generate a lot of excitement over the next little while. What inspires that excitement? What got you and the judges really feeling that this had something special to it?
So, in a nutshell, it seems to me that our winemakers are really understanding how to get very characterful Syrah. If Syrah's defining characteristic is pepper and spice, then the winemakers are doing that very, very capably. What struck me about the category in general is if you're a wine novice and quite dramatic flavors are a little disconcerting, then Syrah's probably not something to cut your teeth on. And maybe that's why Merlot remains so commercially successful, because it's a rather safe option. Our best Syrahs are full of character and full of flavor, and and can tend to be very peppery. And I think the Eenzaamheid it's got a lot of things going for it, but pepper is definitely one of them.
It is a wine that finished with 96 points, top of the category. Janno, has this surpassed expectations, or were you quietly confident this would get a pretty good result from the judges?
To be completely honest, I was actually hoping for something lower, be a bit more realistic. It's my first time going over 95, so a 96 pointer, it's big for us. It certainly was a huge surprise to finish top of the pile. But I must say the wine was really good. It is still really good. We had a slight shift in style. And we reined in the ripeness a little bit. I started working with a bit more whole bunch fermentation. That also obviously brings in the 20% whole bunch we do as stems with it. So that's green stems. The rest of it, so that's part of the fermentation. The rest of it we destem, and the stems we put on trays and dehydrate them, just to get rid of the most green, can I call it plant liquid, plant sap, to just dehydrate most of this, to not impart bitterness back into the wine, or astringency, and to build in some pepper and some tannins. We tend to struggle to get good tannins in the warmer years, so using stems or stalks as part of the fermentation just help build in some mouthfeel, some tannins, and a bit of a longer finish.
Has the phone been ringing off the hook? Has the email crashed at the farm? Everybody trying to get hold of this wine now?
Yeah, I must say we've had quite a few online sales through our website and through various other platforms. So yeah, it definitely gives the farm a bit of momentum, if you can call it that.
I don't think that's going to stop anytime soon. It is the top performing Shiraz, not only pushing sales, I'm sure, but also just putting a smile on everybody's face at the farm, and not just yours. How much has this inspired your team to push on, to do more, to take this little corner of Paarl and keep pushing it into something that people really get to know and celebrate?
Yeah, no, the team really enjoyed it when I broke the news to them after the ceremony on Tuesday, and they're all really proud. And for me, it's really important for all members of staff to buy into the concept of quality and delivering quality at all price points. It's not about just going to a job and earning a salary. It's about having putting your heart into it. And I think that's when your quality gets seen by a panel like blind, it means so much to us that are involved in the whole process from start to finish. It's definitely extremely rewarding and a feather in our cap, and definitely motivates us to work even harder and hit it out of the park next time. So yeah.
195 rand a bottle. Is it going to stay there?
Unfortunately, it's not sustainable. So yeah, we'll have to look at that. But for now, I was happy with my price before I got the award, so I'll stick to that price for now.
Buy that wine while you can. Just quickly in closing, back to you, Richard. The chenin has won. Give me another wine that you're working on at the moment that Christian and his team might be looking to keep an eye out for in future awards that comes from your stable.
Well, we've got one that we're working on, but we've been sworn to secrecy by marketing, so I'm not allowed to talk about it, that particular one. But anyway, we've been doing a lot of work on our existing wines. How we can improve on quality, sort of rejuvenate them a little bit. So we've been doing quite a bit of work on the Syrah, and especially. So we've just bottled some of the newer vintages now that I think are absolutely fantastic. So look out for those. And then the pinotages, of course. We've also changed the style slightly over the years. More concrete tanks, making a little bit more traditionally, but also a little bit more modern in style, if that makes sense. More livelier fruit, freshness, harvesting at the correct time, that sort of thing. So I think the whole range, in general, I think is picking up, and so that's very exciting for us for Bellingham. For me as well, at least my wife diagnosed me with hyperactivity. So, which probably is true. So I always feel like I got to do something, and I'm always running around. I'm always busy with something. And sometimes, with wines, just to breathe out and just, the wines must make themselves, and that's, that's often the hardest part, just letting it take its own course, and the terroir must come out naturally. And I think, that's also taken me a number of years to understand that properly. And I think we are finally there. And I'm excited for the future. I think we've got amazing terroirs, and the wines really are showing well. So,
all right, tough pick, but plenty of good wines to look forward to from Richard. Very quickly, Sebastian, we're almost out of time. New baby, catching eyes. One other wine that the judges might see coming across their competition horizons in the not too distant future.
This is the only competition I'm entering. No, I think the one that I'm trying to punt, and it might not be just through competitions, but the cultivar that I'm also passionate about is a hard to pronounce variety called Mourvèdre. Moerse lekker wijne is wat I mark. And Mourvèdre, is something that we've been working on for quite a long time, and since '99, and I'm just actually putting it out there to all the winemakers out there listening or watching, that they must make more single varietal Mourvèdre so that we can introduce the world a little bit more to this interesting, complex, crazy, weird grape, which I think makes them special wines.
Dark, stormy, charismatic, never sure what it's going to do next. Is that the Mourvèdre or the Sebastian? I'm not sure. I think it applies to both. We'll watch out for that. And then back to Eenzaamheid and Janno. Everyone's looking at Shiraz and thinking, right, what else can he do? Give us another wine we should keep an eye out for.
Yeah, then we've had some good success with our, which on the lighter side of the spectrum of reds, we've seen quite a lot of people asking for lighter reds, especially in the warmer climate, the summer months, spring and autumn. So it's not always about the full-bodied reds. We do a very good Cinsault, and I've just put some Malbec to new barrels, so let's see how that plays out.
We'll be watching those closely. We'll be watching Eenzaamheid closely as the breakout performer in these collective reports. Christian, back to you just in closing. 3 down. There are more to come. What's next on the Winemag horizon?
So next up is Signature Red Blends, which is our catch-all term for non-Bordeaux, Rhone style, Cape Red, you name it. That's our next category report, and then that's followed by, in due course, Cape Bordeaux Red and Sauvignon Blanc, and then Cabernet and Chardonnay.
It is a busy year ahead for Winemag, and together with Christian and Jax, who behind the scenes does an extraordinary job, we'll be keeping you posted on all of those results, the Winemag Prescient reports through the course of 2022. Christian, thank you for joining us. Another great job from you and the judges, and generating plenty of debate, which I think is as important as anything, and getting people talking about wine, drinking different wines, and the more they argue and drink, well, the more they're drinking and supporting the industry. So we are happy, and to Janno and to Sebastian and to Richard, guys, well done. Accolades that are well deserved, clearly, and some wine that's going to get a lot of people watching on very, very closely going forward. Looking forward to having you all back on the show soon, whether it's to drink wine, to celebrate awards, or both. And Christian, we look forward to having you back with more awards again soon. Guys, have a lovely, lovely evening. Stay warm down in the Cape, and we'll chat to you all again soon. Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Yes, hello.
So there we go. Janno and Eenzaamheid with the top show. Mag Prescient report. Also Sebastian Beaumont and his new baby, his Cape White blend, that finished top with 94 points. And as with Eenzaamheid, 96 points, so too 96 points for the Bernard Series Old Vine from Bellingham with Richard Duckitt. That does it for this evening. On Monday, I'll be coming to you live from Royal Johannesburg Golf Club, a new restaurant, the Old Oak. Restaurants at golf clubs, it'll be toasted sandwiches and average food. Actually, no. The chef, Ransley, used to work at Overture under Bertus Besson. The menu's terrific. The wine list is very surprising in a good way, and it includes a one-off partnership with L'Avenir with a couple of wines. We'll be tasting those, talking to the chef, and running through the wine list on Monday evening. For the rest of tonight, well, if you are at a loose end at 8 o'clock, the Dan Nicholl Show this evening. We've got 2 Wimbledon finalists. We've got both Kevin Anderson on the line from Florida and KG Montjane, first Black African woman ever to play at Wimbledon, reached the final in the wheelchair tennis last year. Oxenchae, the Sharks and Springbok prop forward, and Barry Hilton, South Africa's comedy great. That's our lineup. That's Super Sport Channel 208 at 8 p.m. tonight. And if you're watching this as part of the Pick and Pay Wine Club and joining the virtual winemakers table with Warwick, well, I'll see you in just a couple of minutes' time. I'll be jumping over to that, the chance to make some great food, drink some great wine, and celebrate the joy that is South African wine production. That does it for now. Big thank you to Christian Jackson, the team at Winemag. See you again on Monday evening. Have a lovely wine drinking weekend, and congratulations again to everybody in the different top 10s. Goodbye. To join the Pick and Pay Wine Club, simply SMS your smart shopper number to 36775. It's absolutely free, and you'll get for yourself 3 times the smart shopper points on every bottle of wine bought. You'll also get a 20% discount on 10 different wines each month, a 25% discount on a case of wine, and a Magnum, some terrific competitions and invitations to awesome events.